Inside America's Boardrooms, the informational show for board members and corporate secretaries. Brought to you with knowledge partners NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, R.R. Donnelly, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.
Welcome to this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, the CEO of Boardroom Resources, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to part 2 of a series where the FBI is visiting the show. And let me introduce my guest, and that is Randy Coleman, who's the Assistant Director for the FBI's Counterintelligence Division. And Randy, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks, TK.
Okay, so in the first session, we talked a little bit about what the counterintelligence does. We talked a little bit about what the environment is out there. Now, we want to dig into those boardrooms and those executive offices just a little bit. And my first question for you is, this new risk environment is sort of new to all these experienced people who have run their companies or built their careers. None of us had to have dealt with the problem, the cyber risks, the tech problems, or even some of the sabotage and whatever that's occurring today. So you have an opportunity to go into boardrooms to sort of talk about these general issues in this environment. Sort of, what's your take on how knowledgeable directors are today when you have those experiences on going in?
That's a great question, TK. I think it's interesting. It's a mixed bag when you go into different boardrooms to talk to the senior executive folks about counterintelligence threat. Many times you find that it's not part of their equation, right? It's not part of what they think about on a quarterly basis when they're doing their business. And one of the things that I hit right off the bat with them is hey, the FBI is not here to try to explain to you how to do business. We're not here to tell you to do business or not do business with a particular nation. But what we're here to do, and I think is obligated by the FBI, is to really define what the threat is. So they can actually go back with their executive management and put that threat piece into the equation as they begin to make decisions about how they're doing business. The FBI understands there's expanding markets and globalization, and so it's impossible for a company to make decisions that they wouldn't do business overseas. That's just not part of the equation today. But what I think executives are not probably aware of is the current threat. So I think I see that as our biggest obligation when we go in to speak with people. As I mentioned in the earlier segment, the intelligence we're collecting, the investigations that we have open right now, over the last 12 months, there's been a 53% increase in investigations. And that's extremely concerning because the FBI considers the economic viability of the country directly related to national security. And so that's why it's important that we're getting out to talk to as many people as we can through our strategic partnership coordination piece, to go out and explain what those threats are. So I think that companies get it if we're able to go out and start creating an awareness, but not initially when we walk in to start talking to them about why we're there and what we want to talk to them about.
Yeah, I could see where a power company or somebody that operates dams or things that immediately have a risk element to them that you would be well aware of. I'm not sure that's the case with other companies that aren't thinking through their risk, whether it's stealing credit card account information or the government being hacked for information. So it seems sort of like an endless game of trying to stay one up on all these entities, that some with a heck of a lot of resources, others just with time to sort of attack or breach, if you will.
Yeah. You know, you're exactly right. In fact, historically, when you looked at what we were focused on, the FBI was focused on, was classified information. We were really looking at the sectors that had research and development going on in classified. But what we've discovered is this theft is occurring at mom and pop companies that have nothing to do with classified information. As simple as sprinkler heads. The technology, the research and development to make that the best sprinkler head. We see nation-state actors that are actually going after that type of research and development. And companies are losing hundreds of billions of dollars a year right now, and that goes right to the the heart of the economy. And it's getting more pervasive, and we're actually seeing nation-state sponsored actors trespassing into companies just to put a thumb drive in their network so they can actually download and take over the system. And so bottom line is no one's immune from what we're seeing right now from nation-state actors.
So here's one of the worries that I have, and I think this is a great conversation for us to educate our audience on. One of the things that because this is an area that none of us have had a lot of experience in our careers, all of a sudden faced with this, it's very hard to know how competent your defense and security group is, or your cyber risk IT group is. And so to me, the number one job that I need to do first is make sure that I know that I have the right people in those spots. Now, I'm not sure as a director that I'm going to be able to do that. So it seems apparent to me that I'm going to need to go find an expert or a third party, either have somebody on the board of directors with me or hire a third party to make sure that they can tell me that I have the right people in these positions. Would you agree? And if not, how would you advise somebody to know that they've got the right people in the right spot?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And you're right. They need to have that expertise because many companies that we go out and talk to, that's absolutely the response that we get is not having those requisite skills needed to take on the threat that is emerging today. And that's the other part to consider is the threat is changing. I mean, the threat changes quarterly. So it requires somebody that is coming in, at least a third party that's up on those type threats. I'll say that there needs to be reach back into the federal government, for example, the FBI, to be able to have the type of contacts that the FBI has corporately now. We're able to push out immediate threat information to those type of contacts that we can feed the C-suite of a particular company so they can take appropriate action. But the security apparatus from an IT standpoint to stay in front of these threats needs to have a direct access to the CEO and the C-suite of a particular company to make sure that they stay out in front of it. Absolutely.
Well, it's a challenge, and one of the things that makes it a challenge is even how do you decide who is the right person to help you analyze your own staff? Now, we know companies like PwC have whole divisions that are all centered around IT and security and whatever. There's also a lot of other organizations out there that are people that are retired from the FBI or NSA or whatever, that have experience. But the downside of that is that everybody is starting to hang a shield out there who has touched any of these organizations. And now as a director, you really have to make sure that you're bringing in the right third party to analyze that you got the right staff. So how would you, let's say a board asked you to say, how would I go about making sure that I have a good consultant that knows this area? What thought process would you tell them?
Well, I think certainly, you know, the existing relationships that many corporations have, and I think the Counterintelligence Division, we're up to like 15,000 corporate contacts that we have right now. And the Cyber Division, very similar, is to expand on those relationships. And you're right, there are a tremendous amount of retired federal employees that you see every day that are experts, or claimed experts in a particular area. But you know, due diligence needs to be played on where these people come from. And you could be fairly certain that if you take a look at their background and the work in the cybersecurity, the work that they are doing for the federal government in the mitigation and understanding the threat, I think that would be a great starting point for any CEO to look at somebody, bringing them on board, whether it be a third-party contract or hiring somebody to be able to set up, establish, and maintain a particular security apparatus to protect the company's equities.
Well, Randy, we've sort of identified the environment. We've talked about the executive offices in the boardroom. Now we're going to take a look, for our third series, we'll want to talk about the resources that are available to companies. So I will have you back in a few moments and we'll see if we can get that last piece. And that will conclude this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. We'll be back again next week with that third part of our FBI series, and we will see you then. Thank you.
Join us again next week for Inside America's Boardrooms. Brought to you with Knowledge Partners, NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, R.R. Donnelly, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.